My husband's best friend is a very handsome man. Sorry to my husband, but the passion is burning. I've loved my husband since elementary school. We were best friends first, always together, always in sync. By the time high school rolled around, that friendship had blossomed into love, the kind of love that felt unshakable, like we were written into each other's destinies. We were inseparable, so much so that when we broke up in our junior year of high school, it felt like my world had been ripped apart. I didn't know who I was without him. While some people go through breakups and find themselves, I just broke. I grieved him like I had lost a piece of myself. My friends tried to get me to move on, to meet new guys, to at least pretend I was okay, but I couldn't. The thought of being with someone else felt wrong. So, I shut myself out from the world, burying myself in school and my own loneliness, waiting for the pain to pass. Meanwhile, he was living. I don't blame him for it. He did what I couldn't, he explored, he dated, he had new experiences. I'd hear whispers about the girls he was with, but I never asked him about it when we found our way back to each other at the end of high school. All that mattered was that he was mine again. We went to the same college, moved in together, and the moment we graduated, we sealed our love with marriage. It was everything I had dreamed of. A love story that came full circle. A life built with the person I had always considered my soulmate. And for years, I was happy. I truly was. But Tucker, my husband's best friend. The same Tucker who, for as long as I could remember, had been our lovable, chubby, nerdy third wheel. Tucker, who wore thick-rimmed glasses too big for his round face, whose shirts never quite fit right because his belly would always peek out when he stretched. Tucker, who always had an answer for everything, who could calculate math problems in his head faster than anyone I knew, but would still turn red when a girl so much as looked at him. I remember teasing him mercilessly, cradling his soft, doughy cheeks in my hands and calling him my silly chipmunk. Then, after high school, he was gone. His entire family relocated to France, and just like that, our trio became a duo. My husband and I were devastated. It still feels like yesterday when we stood at the airport, waving goodbye to him as he disappeared past the terminal gates, his pudgy fingers adjusting his glasses one last time before vanishing into another world. We kept in touch, of course. Video calls, messages, occasional postcards from Paris. But life moved on. My husband and I got married, built our life together, and Tucker became more of a distant memory, until now. Now, he was back. Apparently, things hadn't gone the way he planned. He had been engaged, of all things, but his fiancée had left him. And after walking away from his father's company, he decided to return home, to us. Us three, just like old times. Except, it wasn't like old times at all. The moment we saw his name light up on my husband's phone, saying he had landed, we rushed to the airport, eager to see him again. I expected to see the same Tucker I had always known, the goofy, lovable nerd. But what I saw instead nearly made me forget how to breathe. As the automatic door slid open, he appeared, Tucker. Or at least, some version of him I could barely recognize. He strode towards us, suitcase in one hand, moving with an effortless confidence I had never seen before. His face, sharp, angular, breathtakingly chiseled, looked like something out of a high-fashion magazine. His blonde hair, no longer the messy mop it once was now artfully tousled, effortlessly perfect. And his body. My God. He was huge. Not in the way he used to be, not in the soft, round way that earned him endless teasing, but in a way that made my mouth go dry. His shoulders were broad, muscles rippling under the fitted black sweater he wore. His chest was firm, defined, making the fabric stretch in a way that should be illegal. He moved like he knew he was attractive, like he had spent the last few years sculpting himself into a masterpiece. I stood there, frozen, my fingers gripping the strap of my purse like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. Tucker? I whispered under my breath, almost doubting it was him. He lifted his gaze, and the moment our eyes met, I felt a jolt run through my body, sharp, electric, something unfamiliar and entirely inappropriate. Then he smiled. That same boyish grin, the one I had seen 1,000 times, except this time, it wasn't boyish at all. It was devastating. Dahlia, Chris, he called, waving like nothing had changed. Chris got to him first, grinning as they exchanged a firm, brotherly fist bump. And then Tucker turned to me. His arms were open before I even processed what was happening. I should have stepped forward, should have hugged him like I always used to. but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. Why did I feel so warm? Why did my chest feel tight? I barely had time to react before he pulled me into a hug. Oh. Oh, no. His arms wrapped around me, strong and unyielding. His chest, solid, unmovable, pressed against mine, making me acutely aware of just how much he had changed. He smelled like expensive cologne and something else, something undeniably masculine. A slow, unbearable heat crept up my neck. My knees wobbled. Why did I suddenly feel like I was burning? Tucker didn't have a place to stay. It wasn't surprising, he had just uprooted his life and come back here with nothing but his suitcase and whatever was left of his broken heart. He had casually mentioned his plans to check into a hotel while searching for an apartment, but Chris immediately shut that idea down before Tucker could even finish his sentence. No. You can come stay with us, my husband said without hesitation, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Tucker hesitated, running a hand through his tousled blonde hair. I don't want to impose. Impose? Chris scoffed, throwing an arm over Tucker's shoulders like they were still teenagers. Come on, man. Your family. It's not even a question. Then, as if suddenly remembering that I existed, Chris turned to me, eyes expectant. I felt Tucker's gaze on me, too. My stomach twisted. Of course, I couldn't say no. That would be weird, wouldn't it? It wasn't like I had a valid reason to protest. I forced a small smile and gave a nod of approval. Chris grinned at Tucker, his excitement practically radiating from him. See, he said, like this was some sort of victory. We'd love to have you stay with us. With that settled, they started loading Tucker's luggage into the car. I trailed slightly behind them, feeling like a teenager with an embarrassing crush, keeping my distance, avoiding eye contact, acting as if just being near him was some kind of dangerous temptation. The ride home from the airport was unbearable. Chris was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and Tucker was in the back. The car was filled with the sound of their voices, an endless stream of nostalgia, laughter, and inside jokes that made it seem like no time had passed between them at all. They talked about high school, about the stupid things they used to do, about how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. Meanwhile, I was silent. I wasn't normally this quiet. Usually, I would have been right there with them, laughing, reminiscing, throwing in my own memories. But my thoughts were elsewhere. Because every time I glanced at the rearview mirror, my eyes found him. Tucker. I couldn't stop myself. I kept looking, stealing glances when I thought he wasn't paying attention, studying him, trying to pinpoint what exactly made him so breathtaking. Was it the sharpness of his jawline? The way his lips curled just slightly at the edges when he listened to Chris? The way the dim lights of the highway cast shadows across his features, making him look like he had stepped right out of a dream? But the worst part, the most humiliating part, was that every time I looked at him, I found him already looking back at me. Our eyes met in the mirror. I yanked my gaze away, my face burning. Dahlia is so quiet. His voice cut through my trance, smooth and deep. I could feel his amusement, like he knew exactly why I had been so silent. It's not like you to be this quiet, Dahlia. I gasped, completely caught off guard. Chris let out a laugh. That's true. What's up with that, babe? You're usually the loudest one. I scrambled for a response, forcing out a nervous chuckle. Oh, haha. I'm just so glad to see you. It's been so long. I hoped that sounded convincing. I hoped neither of them could hear the thundering of my pulse. Finally, we made it home. Chris showed Tucker to the guest room, talking animatedly about how glad he was to have him back. I followed, nodding along, pretending to be composed while internally screaming at myself. I didn't know what was wrong with me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, tossing and turning beneath the sheets. Beside me, Chris was already fast asleep, his breathing deep and even. I tried to close my eyes, tried to force my mind to settle, but it was impossible. Because Tucker was here. Not just in town. Not just visiting. He was here, in our house. Sleeping under the same roof. Down the hall. I exhaled sharply and turned onto my side, willing my body to relax. But the more I tried, the worse it got. My body was hot, too hot. My thoughts were a mess. My stomach felt weird, like there were knots twisting themselves into something I didn't want to acknowledge. I needed to calm down. Carefully, I slipped out of bed. Chris didn't stir. Padding quietly to the kitchen, I decided to make myself a glass of warm milk, something to soothe me, to make me feel normal again. Maybe then I'd finally be able to sleep. But as I reached for a glass, I heard footsteps. And then, a voice. Couldn't sleep either? I froze. Tucker had just joined me in the kitchen. He moved silently, his presence familiar yet foreign in the dim light. Without a word, he reached for a glass from the cupboard, then turned to me and gestured for me to pour him some milk as well. I did. For a while, we sat in silence, the only sounds being the occasional soft clink of our glasses against the counter and the faint hum of the refrigerator. The quiet between us wasn't awkward, it was heavy, filled with something unspoken. And yet, for the first time since he arrived, I felt my heart settle, my mind slow down. The kitchen light was dim and warm, casting Tucker in soft shadows. The glow illuminated only parts of his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the curve of his cheekbone, the solemn set of his mouth. His brow was furrowed, deep in thought, and there was something almost devastating about the way he looked at that moment. I had never seen him like that. I studied him carefully, watching as he idly traced patterns on the wooden counter with his fingertips. Finally, I broke the silence. You look troubled. His shoulders tensed slightly, like he hadn't expected me to say anything. For a second, I thought he might brush it off, but then his grip on his glass tightened. He hesitated. So I pressed, my voice gentle. Is it the breakup? You must have loved your fiancé that much? Tucker exhaled a short breath, shaking his head. I don't know, his voice was quiet, distant, as if the words barely belonged to him. He avoided my gaze, staring down at his glass as if it held all the answers. I didn't know what else to say. I remained silent, unwilling to push him further. I once heard that humans are uncomfortable with silence, that they'll do anything to fill it. And just like that, Tucker spoke again. I cried for a while. I cried for her until I realized, he paused, his fingers drumming against the counter, that she was just a distraction for me this whole time. I blinked. A distraction? He gave a short, humorless chuckle. Yeah. I didn't interrupt. I only listened, absorbing his words, fascinated in a way I couldn't quite explain. Normally, I had a short attention span, conversations tended to lose my interest quickly, but this? This was Tucker. And for some reason, I didn't mind sitting here in the dark, letting him unravel his thoughts in his own time. Because the longer he spoke, the longer we got to stay like this. Together. Alone. His voice dropped lower, almost like a confession. I realized that I had been grieving a love I never got to have since high school. That made me sit up a little straighter. A love you never got to have? Tucker finally raised his head, and when his eyes met mine, it felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. His gaze was intense, unwavering, like he was seeing through me, through everything. There was a girl that I really liked when we were kids. His voice was steady, deliberate. But there was nothing I could do about it. Because if I did, 3 people would have been left heartbroken. My heart thudded against my ribs. I had no idea Tucker had liked anyone in high school. He had never mentioned it, never even hinted at it. He had always been so focused. On school. On his future. On hanging out with me and Chris. And yet, here he was, confessing something that felt like a missing piece of a puzzle I hadn't even known existed. Tucker continued, his voice softer now. To tell you the truth, at one point, I did have a chance. He paused, his lips quirking into the ghost of a smile. But then I got worried about my weight. My brows furrowed. Your weight? He let out a light laugh. Yeah. You remember? I was a chubby kid. Big stomach, chipmunk cheeks, you used to call me Chipmunk. I laughed at the memory, shaking my head. Oh my God, I did. I forgot about that. His grin lingered for a second before fading. I wanted to lose weight before I made a move on her. I thought if I changed, if I became better, then maybe she'd look at me differently. He exhaled, shaking his head. So I started cutting down calories. I hit the gym. I changed everything about myself. A shadow crossed his face. But before I knew it, she got back with her boyfriend. I swallowed. That must have been hard. Tucker gave a short nod. It was. And when my parents moved to France, I had a choice. I could have stayed behind. But I couldn't stomach seeing her with someone else again. A great guy, by the way, he added with a half smile. I adored him, too. I felt something deep in my chest tighten. I had never known any of this. Not a single piece of it. Tucker had always been, well, Tucker. The confident, charming, effortlessly cool guy. I had never imagined he had been harboring something like this, years of unspoken feelings, hidden behind laughter and school books. And now, he was back. Was he here to find her? Before I could ask, he stretched his arms over his head and yawned. Welp, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Looks like the milk helped. I'm feeling sleepy now. I should go back to bed. I blinked. Wait, that's it? He grinned. That's it. Good night, Dahlia. And just like that, he walked away, disappearing down the hallway. I sat there for a long time, staring at the spot where he had been, my heart still hammering. The next morning, Chris was already dressed for work when I walked into the kitchen, still groggy from barely getting any sleep. He kissed my cheek and handed me a cup of coffee before grabbing his briefcase. Hey, he said, glancing at Tucker, who had just walked in, still stretching from his sleep. Since I'll be busy all day, can you walk Tucker around town? Show him a few places so he can find an apartment? I hesitated, but then Tucker smiled at me, his expression unreadable. Yeah, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. I can do that. And just like that, we had a plan. I was about to spend the whole day alone with Tucker. Tucker ended up finding an apartment. It wasn't the one I had excitedly pointed out, nor was it one he seemed to care much about. It was just a place. A space to exist. A place where we both knew what had happened between us would forever remain hidden. I wish I could say that after that day, things returned to normal. That I went home and kissed my husband like nothing had changed. That Tucker and I never spoke about it again, and the heat of that stolen moment faded into nothing but a guilty memory. But that would be a lie. The truth was, everything changed. I couldn't look Chris in the eyes without feeling my stomach twist in knots. I couldn't hear Tucker's name without my pulse quickening, my mind flashing back to the way his lips felt against mine, the way his hands had held me like I was something he had longed for his entire life. But the worst part? I wanted it to happen again. Every time I passed by his new apartment building, my heart pounded with temptation. I wondered if he was thinking about me. I wondered if I should go upstairs, knock on his door, and let myself fall into the arms of the man who had always loved me, even when I never knew. I never did. Tucker, for all his sorrow, for all his confessions, kept his distance after that day. Maybe he regretted it. Maybe he knew that if we gave in again, there would be no stopping it. So he stayed away. And I stayed with my husband. I told myself it was just a mistake. A fleeting moment of weakness. Something that would pass. But deep down, I knew the truth. Some mistakes don't fade. Some mistakes linger in the shadows of your life, waiting for the day they're no longer mistakes but choices. And someday, I might just make a different choice. Did you enjoy the story? Want more passion, more drama, more intensity? This is your channel. Subscribe so I can bring you more. Thanks for watching, your support means the world.